Almost got here late. Did you watch them this morning? They don't look like me. Tall, skinny guys. I'm running 26.5 miles, 26.2. And they train for that. How do you train for that? You run. And there's strategy. They have to refine their technique. You have to take off just at the right time to get ahead of the other ones, and so they won't pass you up before you run out of wind and steam. And I learned a trick this morning. When you're in a race and you're on a road course, what you do is as you go, if you're in the lead, or as you go around the corner, you speed up so that when the guy behind you comes around the corner, you're further ahead than when he last saw you. And it demoralizes him. Remember that. I learned something this morning. I thought they just ran. Who knew? I don't know about you, as Dave was reading the text about this morning, I thought of the young lady from Indiana who, if you watch the news down there, you've been following, and who is the world record holder in 5,000 meters, and there she is in the last lap and tripped. And, 4 years of training and work laying on the track, down the drain. Did you watch the divers last night? How do you practice that? Have you ever done that? That was the high tower last night. Have you ever gone off one of them things? Back when I was in college, Central had one of the 10-meter platforms, and I'd dive off the springboard, and I fancy myself pretty good at that time. So somebody said, "Well, I'll go off the tower." And I said, "Okay." So I climbed up there and I got the edge and went, whoo. That's a long way down. And these guys are doing somersaults and flips and twists and stuff. And I thought, this is easy. Now, some people, the first time, they just jump off feet first, and keep your feet together, by the way. Because at that speed, if you don't, it won't be pleasant, believe me. But I didn't do that. I said, "Oh, I'm much better than that." So I just, and right about there, it was perfect. Unfortunately, the water was down here. And by the time I got to the water, I was kind of on this side and a little over the top. And I walked like that for about 2 weeks. Oh, that water's hard when you're hitting from 30 feet. It's like hitting concrete. One of the Americans that was, the young ladies that was in the competition last night, did one of those off the high tower, not last night, but earlier, a couple of years ago actually, in training. And she only collapsed so long and broke 2 ribs. When you do that off the edge of the pool, when you're standing there, it's one thing, but when you do it from 30 feet, 33.3 feet, it hurts a lot. So they have to practice, don't they? They have to train. They have to have discipline. Watch these Olympic athletes, and I feel sorry for the ones that finish way behind the others, but they've gotten up at 5:30 in the morning every day for the last 4 years, and they're practicing and it's amazing how good they are to make the Olympics and how hard they work. Sometimes we get the feeling in our faith lives that things just happen, they just come. We don't really have to work at it. Now that's true in marriage, right? You don't have to work with that. That was true when you were in school. You just wrote down the answers, right? You don't have to study or anything. You know. See, yeah, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? If we just knew everything already. But, you know, the fact is, in all walks of life, we have to study, don't we? We have to practice and train, find out new things, and it's the same thing in our faith lives. One of the things that takes us to a higher level in our faith is constant study. Now, we provide opportunities for that. You know, at the end of the year last year, and I've said this many times, how proud I was to say we had 105 average attendance and 107 involved in hands-on ministry. The other side of that was we have like 15 involved in study. Oops. It's probably not good, is it? We have Sunday school class that Dave leads. We have a Bible study that Mike leads. Should have 10 of them, right? I mean, there's how many people? We have 8 in each group. That's a lot of groups, isn't it? I know. Oh, it's not lectures about we got to study and work and learn. And, I just want to relax. Yeah, me too. But it just doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. I mean, if you want to run with the big boys, you got to be out there. So, we've gotten our heads together and we've decided, no, we're going to try some new things. We got some new resources. We're going to, I know Kathy's going to do a study in Women in the New Testament, and I'm going to do a study on parables this fall, and these may be home or church or whatever. We're going to try some things maybe online. We got some new things Dave's going to do. We've got the Film, Faith, and Fellowship that we run once in a while, because that's theological discussion and learning our own faith and how it compares to other things. We're going to try to find a lot of different opportunities, because I know everybody's doesn't want to sit down and go page by page through a book. So we'll try some different things. So avail yourselves of those. Find ways to study. Study Scripture. That's always important, isn't it? I mean, that's our foundational book. When you study Scripture, I would suggest you use 2 or 3 or 4 different translations. Because guess what? Translators don't all do the same thing. Sometimes they have the same word in Greek and they translate it differently depending on the context, whether they should or not. Some of that's arguable. A wonderful example that in the study we were looking at the other day, that when in some translations, when they translate the word, when they're talking about men, they talk about them as ministers, and when they talk about women, the same word is translated as deaconesses. But it's the same word. So, yeah. No contextual influence there. So, you know, use a bunch of different ones. Because different translators translate things differently. It gives you a better picture. We study church, theology, history. Church history is an amazing thing. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to really get in depth into the history of the church, but in the early centuries with the monastic movement of the Desert Fathers and that kept the faith alive, and then coming into the Roman Empire and how it changed, and as you go through the centuries and how the church split and changed and went here and there, and it's an amazing history. It's not always something to be proud of. There's been moments in our church history, in Christianity that you kind of want to go, what were they thinking? But it helps us know who we are. And also helps us understand maybe other faiths and how they go through changes in their history too. When I think of those of the Muslim faith and where they are in many places right now, and it's kind of scary in their extreme folks. And yet I remember that they're 750 years younger than us. And, you know, in 1350, the Christian church was, you know, just getting out of the Crusades, and they were getting in the Inquisitions, and we weren't all that wonderful folk either at that time. So, you know, maybe that helps me understand that they're at a scary phase in their development. But, you know, it helps to know those things, to study. And quite honestly, in the Methodist Church, I'm sorry to say, we haven't done a great job of it. When I went to seminary in 1989, I sat there in my New Testament survey class. I was going, man, this is great. I was learning all this great stuff, and I was learning all about Scripture and the Bible and all that, and I went, oh man, this is just wonderful. Wait a minute. I have been in the church my whole life, at that point, 36 years. How come I don't know this stuff already? You know? No, I never learned it, Junior. It was never taught. And I think that that's wrong, because the danger in that, when you look back, when you study church history, you find out that any time that there is a huge gap between the knowledge that's given to clergy and the knowledge that's given to laity, bad things happen. That's, the last time was called the Reformation. Killed off a third of the population in Europe. Not a good time for the church or for Europe, because there was such a huge gap between those two. And there doesn't need to be one at all. My job is to teach you everything I know. Your job is to study. And I have to study to keep in front of you. Otherwise, you could be up here preaching, I'll be sitting. Right? Does that make sense? Study the works of Wesley, study the works of your faith. Be in constant learning. Because how else do you improve? How else do you know more about yourself and your faith and your relationship with God? But study. Pray. Right? Pray for others. Pray in meditation. Study. Work hard at it. Next week we'll talk about the third leg of that stool. But if you want to be Christian athletes, you have to be disciplined. It's for those who have been trained by it. Discipline is better at the time, but it's painful. But in the long run, you'll be the better for it. Your faith will be stronger for it. So then when those hard times come, your faith will support you through them. Like the plant grown in fertile soil. They have deep roots. And those roots come through study. Do that for me? Okay.